Welcome to Lesson 12E, Blasius flat plate boundary layer. In this lesson, we'll do our first laminar boundary layer example problem, namely the Blasius flat plate boundary layer. I'll walk you through the first 3 steps of our procedure, and I'll show you how to obtain a numerical solution. As a quick review, here are the laminar boundary layer equations, and I note that in place of these terms in terms of outer flow velocity field, we might also use the outer flow pressure field if P of x and t is known instead of capital U of x and t. But in most cases we know capital U, the outer flow. Here's the step-by-step procedure. We'll do the first 3 in this lesson. Here's the setup. We simply have a flat plate that's infinitely long, but starts at x equals 0. Our coordinate system is aligned exactly with the plate. We name this after Blasius because he was the first to solve this problem way back in 1908. This is the classic boundary layer problem. We'll consider 2D steady Newtonian laminar incompressible flow. The plate itself is infinitesimally thin. Flow is steady, 2-dimensional. The free stream, of course, must be known. And here we simply have U equal constant everywhere. In other words, the outer flow is simply a uniform stream of constant speed capital U. This can extend below the plate as well, but we'll consider only the upper part of the plate. As you should recall from previous lessons, any streamline can be considered a wall, so we'll take the streamline that happens to lie on this wall and pretend it's a wall. We'll neglect gravity, and we'll assume that the Reynolds number is high enough for a thin boundary layer to grow. We want to determine the velocity and vorticity profile shapes, and then other things such as boundary layer thickness, friction drag, etc. Going back to our step-by-step solution, we have these equations and this procedure. The first step is to calculate the outer flow. Well, we've already done that, namely U of x and time in general is just U, which is a constant everywhere. And to transform this outer flow into our boundary layer coordinate system is also trivial, since the boundary layer coordinate system is the same as our Cartesian coordinate system that gives us this potential flow. Thus, step 1 is finished. Step 2 is to assume a thin boundary layer, the key being that it does not affect the outer flow. For our problem, we assume that this boundary layer is so thin that at any x location we choose, the speed above the plate is simply capital U, which is a constant. Obviously, if the boundary layer were thick, for example at too low of a Reynolds number, displacement effects would make capital U a little bit bigger than this constant downstream along the plate. So we cannot consider this case. I drew a very thin boundary layer, but again we assume it's so thin that we can't even see it. Step 3 is to solve the boundary layer equations. Well, here capital U is a constant, so del U del t and del U del x in the x momentum boundary layer equation go to 0. So our equations become continuity and x momentum. Thus we have 2 equations and 2 unknowns, U and V. We also need boundary conditions. The highest derivative of U with respect to x is first order, so we need one boundary condition for U for all y at some x, which will specify at x equals 0 the leading edge of the plate, where the boundary layer has not yet formed. We have a first order derivative of V with respect to y, so we specify the no-slip condition, V equals 0, for all x at the wall, or y equals 0. Since we have second order for U with respect to y, we need 2 boundary conditions, namely the other no-slip condition, U equals 0 for all x at y equals 0, and U approaches capital U for all x, and this one is as y goes to infinity, in other words, somewhere above the boundary layer. U has to asymptote to capital U. These are the 4 boundary conditions that we have for this problem. We have the right number of boundary conditions, the right number of equations for the 2 unknowns, so theoretically we should be able to solve this problem. However, no analytical solution has ever been found. Students are welcome to try. We'll approach the problem the way Blasius did, namely, we expect a similarity solution. Why? There's no length scale in our problem, and there's no time scale in our problem. The plate is not oscillating at some period, for example. And since the plate is semi-infinite, there's no length scale. Let's use the giant and ant analogy I've used previously. From the giant's perspective, he sees this flow. If you magnify this region so that we see the ant's perspective, the ant will see exactly the same thing from his vantage point. Here is blasius' similarity assumption from 1908. He let little u be capital U times f prime of eta, where eta is y over some delta of x.
Why did Blasius use f prime instead of f?
Well, Albert, he used f prime instead of f because of hindsight. It turns out that we'll have to integrate u to get v, and that makes the algebra much easier.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome, Albert. My comment here, I use delta C as a characteristic delta thickness of the boundary layer, not necessarily the standard 99% thickness. Now let's plug these similarity variables into our equations. We'll need a lot of derivatives, and we'll have to use the chain rule. So let's write those out here. Since eta is y over delta c of x, and u equal capital U f prime of eta, we can take derivatives. Del eta del y is just 1 over delta c, and I'm not going to keep including this parentheses x here for convenience. Del eta del x is minus y over delta c squared, since delta c is a function of x, and then we have to include d delta c dx. But since y over one of these delta c's is eta, we can rewrite this as negative eta over delta c d delta c dx. For the u derivatives, del u del x is capital U, f double prime of eta. Again, I'm not going to include the parentheses eta in these equations, but we need a del eta del x by the chain rule. Well, we know del eta del x from here, so this becomes negative capital U f double prime eta over delta c d delta c dx. Del u del y is easier. It's just capital U f double prime del eta del y, and del eta del y is 1 over delta c from here, so this is u f double prime 1 over delta c. Taking another derivative with respect to y, we get u f triple prime 1 over delta c del eta del y. And using del eta del y again, we get u f triple prime 1 over delta c squared. We plug all these derivatives into our continuity equation, which we first integrate to get v. We must add some arbitrary function of x when we do this partial integration. Using this equation for del u del x, we have the integral of u f double prime eta 1 over delta c d delta c dx dy plus our g of x. But this grouping of terms is a function of x only, so it can come outside the integral, giving us v equal u over delta c d delta c dx, integral of f double prime eta dy. But eta is y over delta c, so dy is equal to delta c d eta. So we can use this in place of dy, and you see that the delta c in the numerator counteracts this one in the denominator. So v becomes u d delta c dx, integral of f double prime eta d eta, plus g of x, which I forgot to include up here, by the way. Well, what do we do with this integral? Well, the mathematicians among us will immediately see that this is a classic case of integration by parts. You may have used different variables in your calculus class. I learned it as integral of w dz equal wz minus integral of z dw, where here we'll let w equal eta and dz equal f double prime d eta. The derivative dw is thus d eta, and integrating dz gives us z equal f prime. Plugging all these in, we get v equal u d delta c dx times the quantity wz, or eta f prime, minus integral of z dw, which here is the integral of f prime d eta, plus our g of x. Well, fortunately, this is a simple integral, which is just f, so the term in brackets simply becomes eta f prime minus f. It turns out that f itself is kind of like a stream function, so it can have any arbitrary value at the wall. So at the wall where u equal v equals 0 and y equals 0, let's set or pick f equals 0. And since f prime is proportional to u, and that's already 0 at the wall, this whole term becomes 0. And thus we can get rid of this pesky g of x. So finally, v equal u d delta c dx times eta f prime minus f. This is the result of our continuity equation. Let's plug this plus all our other derivatives into the x momentum equation, which I rewrite here, and I'll show each of these terms. The first term and the second term, where you see that we've used v from continuity here, and the term on the right, which is simply this. But if we rewrite and split this term into two parts and rearrange, we get this equation where we notice that these two terms are identical, but one has a negative sign, so they cancel. We can do some other rearrangement and simplification, so we end up with f triple prime plus u delta c over nu d delta c dx f double prime equals 0. I'll call that equation 1. Now let's step back here and see what we have to have in order to have a similarity solution. For one thing, this equation must be a function only of the similarity variables f and eta, or f as a function of eta. But this grouping of terms is not a function of eta, but it must be for a similarity solution. But this is a function only of x, whereas eta is a function of both x and y by its definition. So how is this possible? Well, the only way that can occur is if both sides of the equation are the same and are a constant. Therefore, we conclude that u delta c over nu d delta c dx is a constant which we'll call c. Another way to think about this is to rewrite equation 1 in separated variables fashion, with all the functions of x on one side and all the functions of eta on the other side. And again, that can only hold if they are equal to a constant. Some people pick c at this point to be 1 or a half. I'm going to just leave it as c, since c is arbitrary. We can integrate this to find delta, namely rewrite it as delta c d delta c equals c nu over u, which are all constants, times dx. So integrating delta c squared over 2 equals c nu x over capital U plus some constant. But we know that at x equals 0, delta c has to be 0, since the boundary layer has not had any opportunity to grow yet. Therefore, this constant is 0, and thus delta c is the square root of 2c nu x over u. This is an important solution all by itself. We now know that delta c, the boundary layer thickness, grows like square root of x. When we plug this in to equation 1, we get f triple prime plus c f double prime equals 0, which I'll call equation 3. This is our similarity equation, sometimes called the Blasius equation. Now consider boundary conditions. We started with 4 boundary conditions, but we've reduced the equation to a third order ODE, so we need only 3 boundary conditions. Let's look at the previous boundary conditions and see how they map into these similarity variables. At y equals 0, u equals 0. That tells us that f prime of 0 is 0. At y going to infinity, u equal capital U, so f prime of infinity must go to 1. At x equals 0, u equal capital U for all y, which becomes f prime of infinity goes to 1, since eta is y over delta c, and as delta c goes to 0, eta goes to infinity. And our fourth boundary condition was at y equals 0, v equals 0, and that just leads to f of 0 equals 0. Remember, we had already specified this to get rid of that g of x. Well, fortunately, we notice that these two are the same, and we have thus 3 boundary conditions for a third order equation in similarity variables. So we can finally say that similarity has been achieved, where our similarity variable, eta, when we plug in delta, becomes y squared of u over 2c nu x, and f prime of eta is u over capital U. And our equation is repeated here. Well, we're still in step 3 of our boundary layer procedure. We have the equation, we have the proper boundary conditions. All that's left is to solve it. Well, even though it looks fairly simple, as I said, there's no analytical solution that's ever been found, partly because this term is nonlinear, so Blasius had to solve it numerically. He used a series expansion technique. He solved it by hand, since there were no computers back in 1908, and Blasius did this for his PhD thesis. We'll solve it using the Runge-Kutta technique, of which we're already familiar. We can do in less than a second on a computer what Blasius took years to do by hand. We'll have to pick a c. I'll pick c equal 1/2 to get our numerical solution, but I kept c as a variable in my MATLAB code. Here are the details of the Runge-Kutta solution. Let variable y1 equal f double prime, y2 equal f prime, and y3 equal f. The derivative, which we'll call d1, is y1 prime, which is f triple prime, which we get from our equation as negative c ff double prime. But in terms of these variables, is negative c y3 y1. The other two are more trivial since f double prime is y1 and f prime is y2 by our definitions. Boundary conditions in terms of these y variables become y2 of 0 equals 0, y3 of 0 equals 0, and y2 of infinity equal 1. These are the equations that we put into our Runge-Kutta code. Well, as you recall, Runge-Kutta is a marching code, so if we march from eta equals 0 to infinity, we must meet these boundary conditions with these derivatives. But the problem is we don't have all the starting conditions, namely, we're missing y1 of 0. So what we have to do is guess y1 of 0 so that y2 of infinity is 1. This is the key to solving this problem. Here's a printout of my MATLAB code. You can see here I set c equal a half, and I had to keep guessing y1 of 0, the boundary condition, and look at the solution until y2 is 1 at, quote, infinity. I went out to 10 here. Using the ODE 45 subroutine, with the derivatives I specify, this span of eta, and my boundary conditions, I solve this with this Runge-Kutta code. Here are some screenshots of the results. It turns out that this y1 of 0 is the correct one, where this table shows eta, y1, y2, and y3. After some trial and error and iteration, this value of y1 causes our y2 to go to 1, or very nearly 1, to the fifth digit at eta equal 10, or infinity. If you put in any other value of y1 at the wall, this will asymptote to something other than 1. So this is the only correct solution that satisfies all three boundary conditions. Here's a plot of the results. y1 is f double prime, which is proportional to tau, which is approximately mu del u del y. F prime is proportional to u, and we see from the plot that that asymptotes to 1. What about f, which is our y3 variable? Well, it turns out that f, as I already mentioned, is like a stream function, since u equal del psi del y, and thus f is proportional to the integral of f prime. Notice that y1 of 0 is our converged value to 5 digits of 0.33205. Finally, I plot the Blasius profile and compare it to experimental data. This is found in my fluids book, and we see excellent agreement. The Blasius boundary layer was a landmark success in the field of fluid mechanics. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more videos.